you so much for joining us for today's particularly timely session. Before we get started, this is our first opportunity to publicly acknowledge the passing in the last week of Ambassador Martin Indyk. Ambassador Indyk, of course, served twice as U.S. Ambassador to Israel, served as a special envoy for Israel-Palestinian negotiations, and had a direct and high-level impact on the U.S. effort to find peace between Israelis and Palestinians throughout his career. But more than that, he served as a trusted mentor to so many who currently serve in positions of government or in think tanks and advocacy organizations, all committed to what drove him in his career, that pursuit of peace. And that extended to his service as a board member of Israel Policy Forum, where he challenged us to be sharper in our analysis, to be more impactful in our work. And he especially was a fierce champion of our young professional program, IPF Atid, that he took every opportunity to engage and to inspire. I know that his legacy and his inspiration and his memory will continue to be a blessing for all who knew him, and may his memory be a blessing as we think of his family and friends, and we mourn his passing. I know that we would all benefit from his wisdom to help us realize or understand the impact of the last few days. And I know that his memory will continue to inspire me and all of us at Israel Policy Forum in our work. I want to also acknowledge that we are speaking today 300 days exactly from the October 7 attacks. 300 days that Israeli hostages have been held by Hamas in captivity. One more day is another day too many. And I know all of us at Israel Policy Forum are thinking of those hostages and especially standing in support of the families who so desperately want to see their loved ones home. And we stand with them in the call to bring them home now. Of course, we are speaking following monumental days in Israel and the wider Middle East, and it's become a kind of cliche over the last week to say that every hour feels like a day, and every day feels like a week, and every week feels like years. I'm pretty sure Prime Minister Netanyahu was in the United States last week, but I'm not sure I can even remember the amount of developments that we have seen in recent days. But I can think of no better team to work with, frankly, at Israel Policy Forum to help unpack each and every moment. I encourage you all to check out today's Koplow column by our Chief Policy Officer, Michael Koplow, and listen to the most recent episode of Israel Policy Pod with Neri Zilber, Shira Efron, and Michael Koplow. And frankly, when it comes to Iran, there is nobody better that I can think for us to have the opportunity to speak with than Sima Shine, a longtime friend of Israel Policy Forum and someone that we always want to turn to in moments like these. And sometimes she is hard to get because she is very, very busy in these days, and we thank her for her time. Sima, of course, is currently the head of the Iran program at the Institute for National Security Studies in Israel for most of her career. She served in the Israeli intelligence community. Her last position was the head of research and evaluation in the division of research and evaluation at the Mossad. And in that capacity, she was in charge of the production of daily and periodical evaluations on Mideast and international issues, led security and intelligence dialogues with various counterparts in the international community, and was involved in political military meetings with decision makers. And she has also served as, of course, deputy head of strategic affairs in Israel's National Security Council, and later served in the Ministry of Strategic Affairs, where she was particularly responsible for the Iran file. So Sima is more than qualified to help us unpack what has been a wild series of events. Since, of course, Netanyahu's visit last week, we saw the horrific attack in the north and Majdal Shams, killing a dozen children in the Druze community there. Remarkable strike that Israel has acknowledged that it carried out in the southern neighborhood of Beirut, the Hezbollah stronghold, killing the high-level high-level Hezbollah commander, Fuad Shukr. And of course, now just less than 24 hours later, the remarkable assassination and it's really stunning assassination of Hamas political head Ismail Haniyeh in Tehran while he is there on a presidential visit, an assassination that Israel has not acknowledged, but that Iran has identified as being carried out by Israel and is widely, of course, believed to be carried out by Israel. This comes not long, just weeks after Israel's killing in an operation in Gaza of Mohammed Deif, another senior level Hamas commander, of course, the commander of Hamas military activity, long elusive figure. And so we are seeing really remarkable efforts to strike at the top of the leadership of many of these Iranian proxies. And here in this moment, we are really awaiting the potential for an Iran response or Hezbollah response, Hamas response. And Sima, I want to bring you in to help us unpack how you've been doing over the last few days. What are the initial thoughts with all of these remarkable developments over the last few days? What should our audience really take away from these remarkable developments over the last week?
Thank you, David. It's a good question because it's the good part of the conversation, which means Israel has such a high intelligence, so accurate intelligence, very special capabilities, operational capabilities, and all this together, of course, enables us to do things that I think only in movies you can see. And this is it's not the first time. We know what happened many years ago also in other aspects. So it is within this framework of a combination of intelligence and operational capabilities that really, from that respect, are very dramatic, I would say. Let me say a word about, before I start, by mentioning the fact that Martin Indyk was also on the board of the INSS and had an immense contribution to the development of the INSS. So we also are very sorry that he is not with us. The last time I saw him was when he came to present his last book, on Kissinger policy, and others was very, as usual, very interesting and very special. So I really think he passed away too early. He could contribute so much to all of us. Now let me go back to where we stand today. As you say, it's 300 days since the 7th of October. Israel has achieved a lot, but not everything it wanted. And of course, no question, we didn't achieve to get to the deal of the hostages, which is one of the questions that I ask myself, is whether the assassination of Haniyeh contributes to speeding a little bit the possibility of getting to a deal. Haniyeh was a symbol more than an important person in the last years, since he was sitting in Qatar. He was not in Gaza. And since the war started, of course, he was just a delivery, one of the delivery systems, I will call, for negotiations. He was not the one who made any decision. He was not the one who could take any decision. And actually, his importance was only by the fact that the Qataris were talking to him, and through him and through some others delivering, and through the Egyptians, of course, delivering it to Sinwar. I think that basically, in the long run, it didn't change the calculus of Sinwar, whether to go for a deal or not, because at the end of the day, as I said, Haniyeh death was much more important to Sinwar than Haniyeh in this respect, because he was the military operator. He was the second to Sinwar, very close to him for years. So I think it might postpone for a short while, but I believe that the basic interest of Sinwar to get to a deal that will bring him achievements that he wants, that were part of the goals of his attack on Israel. I think they will stay, and they will maybe they will allow us to go back, not in the long future, to the negotiations and to come to the end of the first stage of the deal, because this deal has some stages.
Yeah.
That's I think it's very important for the American administration and for the president personally. He has been talking about it. He has been saying it time and again. He wants to be the one who will enable a deal, and then a deal as a beginning of a process that will bring to the end of the war. And perhaps to some arrangements, including something between Israel and the Saudis. I think the more time passes, the less it will be more difficult to reach any normalization between Saudi Arabia and Israel. There are very good relations between the two states under as we call, under the radar. So nobody knows about, but establishing formal relations, I think it will take time because the very basic demands of the Saudis are not there, and the fact that the U.S. administration is already in the process of elections will not make it easier. Let me say some words about where we stand today, or you prefer to ask a question and I'll answer? How do you prefer to do it?
I would love to hear where you see we stand today, and I will be glad to follow up with some questions. But I'll take the moment to now just also share with the audience that we welcome your questions as well. If you can type your question using the Q&A function on the bottom of your screen, and we will take as many questions as we can get to. But Sima, I would love to hear your thoughts on where we stand today.
Okay, so actually first of all, we are in a very tension period. No question that we have made one step forward to a potential, doesn't have to happen, but potential escalation to a full-scale war. I hope it will not happen. I think all sides, Iran, Hezbollah, Israel, the US, does not want it to happen. And therefore, I hope it will not. But no question, we have made a step forward in this direction. And that is, I think, the event in Tehran. First of all, I do think that what Israel has done in Beirut was within the rules of the game. Both sides are fighting, both sides are killing each other. It was within the rules of the game. Nasrallah, in his speech 1 hour ago, mentioned the fact that the guy that was killed in Beirut, Fuad Shukr, as you mentioned, he was surrounded with 2 women and 3 children, and they were killed as well. So from Nasrallah's point of view, Nasrallah is the one who is trying to put equations always. If you kill civilians, we also will kill civilians. If you kill only military people, we will concentrate on soldiers and military bases. So by mentioning this fact in his speech, I think he has opened the option that his retaliation will be more and beyond only a military basis.
And this was remarks he gave just in the past hour.
Yeah, it's the speech that he gave in the funeral of Fuad Shukr. So that's about him. Let me say a word about the assassination of Haniyeh in Tehran. No question, it was a huge humiliation for the regime in Tehran. Not only that he was a guest invited by the regime, invited to the inauguration of the president, which is a very important day, and he was was hosted in a building that is related to the IRGC, or Revolutionary Guard. So it looked as if it's the best place and the most for him to stay, to guarded or something like that. So from their point of view, it's not only not only humiliation from the point of view of the regime and its capabilities, but also the fact that Israel could penetrate into such a place, the fact that they see themselves a little bit responsible for what happened because they invited him and couldn't support all the guarding around him in a way that could save his life. So there is from the beginning, there is an announcement coming from the supreme leader that there will be a retaliation and that Israel will pay a high price on what happened, even though, as you said, Israel didn't take responsibility, but is the usual suspect, and most of the cases is the one who is beyond those events. And therefore, because it is coming from the leader and then from all others in the Iranian regime, there is no question that there will be a retaliation. Now, the question in Israel, of course, is what kind of retaliation? And I want to say that I think it will be different from what we saw in April, when they have shooten us around 300 different types of UAVs, ballistic missile, and others. So I think it will be different because they understood in this event of April that the system that CENTCOM is operating with the local countries and Israel, and at that time it was also France and Britain, is able to intercept most of what they are sending. So I think it might be, first of all, I think it will be not only Iran, I think it will be together with other proxies, specifically Hezbollah, of course, and the Houthis in Yemen, that have already said that they have an open bill with Israel after Israel has attacked the port in the Hodeidah, and also the Iraqi militias. Actually, we had an event 4 or 5 days ago where the Iraqis have sent a number of UAVs and missiles that were intercepted by the Americans in Iraq. Usually they send one. This time they have sent more than one. It took some days that we didn't know it. It wasn't published, but today the military spokesman of the IDF has brought it openly. So I think this is something that we will see in the coming days. I don't think it will take so long as it took in April, 2 weeks to wait. My belief is that my understanding is that it is going to be in a shorter time. And the question, of course, will be what will be the result of those attacks. It could be, if there will be a lot of casualties on the Israeli side, no question there will be a retaliation coming from a response from Israel. A response that might escalate, as I said, might escalate to a full-scale war, even though no one wants it. And I think there is no change in our evaluation that neither Iran, nor Hezbollah, nor Israel and the US want escalation to a full-scale war. Even though there are a lot of in Israel that are saying without a full-scale war with Hezbollah, will not be able to bring back the Israeli citizens that were evacuated from the north. So if to sum up these two events, I think we are before an attack. It might be more than one. It might be more than one from the point of view of not only of the participants, but also from the point of view of several attacks. And it might be more than one day. And of course, Israel is preparing itself. It was announced also that there are a lot of reserves soldiers were called back. And we'll see how things develop. I think we are in a situation where many red lines have been crossed, and the more red lines are crossed by each side, the closer we are to one step too much that will escalate in a different way than we are today. And I hope it will not happen, but it might happen.
So
Please
we
stop
have
here.
yeah, we have a lot of questions, and I appreciate
Okay.
the audience. Keep them coming. I'll say there's kind of two baskets of questions to start with. One, which we'll start, is on the decision on these assassinations. The others questions about the potential retaliation. But starting on the decision itself, Aaron David Miller, our friend, writes, "Why did Israel choose to hit Haniyeh, the location?"
Good friend.
Yeah. Why did Israel choose to hit Haniyeh, both location and timing? And we have another question I'll just add to that from Richard Friedman, which acknowledging that Haniyeh is guilty of many grave sins, given the threat of wide-scale war, the threat to hostages, your assessment on on whether this is a strategic move that is wise, or whether it's a strategic move. Is this suggesting a new strategy, or is this simply an opportunistic moment? Again, related to Aaron's question, why now and why in Tehran, when seemingly he's been he's not been hiding, as you made note in Qatar.
Yeah, that's a very good question. Of course, I'm answering my way of looking on the issue. I don't think it represents the government, because if I was the government, probably I would not decide to do it in Tehran and on Haniyeh. Why in Tehran? Well, that's very easy. Once you decide that he is a target, and you are just waiting for an opportunity. I think Israel could not do it in Qatar, in Doha, because Qatar is so essential to the hostages deal. So there was an understanding we'll not do it there. He was going from time to time to Turkey. I think we also have a lot of problems with Erdogan. So we probably didn't want to do it in Turkey. And it looks that Tehran, from Israel's point of view, is the easiest place. We don't have any relations with them. We are in a war. So let's also give them to understand that if we could do it in a house that is under the responsibility of the IRGC, and a lot of people are sleeping there from time to time, we can do it to others as well. So I think this is the reason why it is in what it was in Tehran, and why Haniyeh. Well, why Haniyeh? I'll say I personally think Haniyeh is not important today, even though I accept that Haniyeh is, as the Israeli government and the Prime Minister said from the beginning, all the leadership of Hamas will one day are a target for Israel. So I accept it, because at the end of the day, Haniyeh today is in Doha, was in Doha, but he was for years the one who was responsible for Gaza. He has a lot of blood on his hands, and a lot of terror activities that happened in Israel were under his ruling, his time in Gaza. So there is no question. He is not a statesman. He is not a politician only. He started as a terrorist, and now he has changed. He has changed for a while, for some years. I think from 2017 or something like that, his position. So there was a decision of the government that the leadership of Hamas will be this way or another one day assassinated or something. Why now? I don't think there is any good reason to say why now. From my point of view, it can harm the hostage deal. It's not important because he's not part of he's not a decision maker on the issue of the war, on the issue of the hostages, and I think it is a symbolic, of course, he's a symbolic personality, but I don't think there is any reason to do it now, to escalate the situation. I am sure that after 14 April, everybody in the Israeli leadership has taken into consideration and calculated that the result of doing this in Tehran will bring a response from Tehran. So I do hope that they have thought of all kinds of responses that can come, and that they are preparing the army and the population in Israel for what might happen. But I think that if I had to advise anyone, I wouldn't advise doing it now in Tehran. I would wait to the end of the war and one day decide what to do and where to do.
Mm-hmm. And I think before these kinds of strikes, Michael Rosenzweig is asking about political calculations. There's so much concern, has been, I guess it's been 50% of the Israeli public polls suggest that that Netanyahu was acting out of personal interest rather than security interest. I imagine there's widespread support for the elimination of someone like Ismail Haniyeh, given who he is inside Israel. But is there any talk or any concern that their politics had anything to do with this decision?
First of all, there are a lot in Israel that are supportive of this decision.
Right.
I can tell you I was interviewed on a radio station that is more to the right, and they were very astonished to hear that I think that Sinwar could wait for, if that Haniyeh could wait for another time. They thought it's wonderful, and not only that, it improves the deterrence of Israel. So
Yeah.
when I say that, I don't think it improved the deterrence, because if Israel will be attacked by everyone tomorrow, it doesn't improve the deterrence. Of course, it shows that Israel has capabilities, no question about that. I don't think anyone had a question about that, intelligence and operational capabilities. Now, whether it is a question of politics, you see, first of all, I don't know how it happened. I have to be very... But if it happened like the New York Times, let's put it on the New York Times. If it happened like the New York Times is describing it, probably it's something that is connected to the Mossad.
Yeah, and the New York Times, just to be clear, is now reporting that this was a bomb planted in the room that Haniyeh was staying, and was likely planted some weeks ago, waiting for an opportunistic moment, and then triggered remotely, not through some sort of missile or drone, but actually a planted bomb. I'm sorry to interrupt, Sima, but it's sort of an opportunity. Ann Hoffman had asked the question, if the Israeli intelligence and operational abilities were so strong in this instance, how do they miss October 7th? How do you explain the difference between these two?
I was waiting for this question. No, of course. I think this. First of all, it's a correct, legitimate question, and I don't think I have a good answer to that. And I don't think anyone will have a good answer to that, because the capabilities and the intelligence for a specific operation are very different from intelligence vis-a-vis such an event as happened on the 7th of October. You have to understand that it is a process. It is a process of years of on one hand, a political conception, willing to maintain Hamas in Gaza in order to separate the West Bank from Gaza so that there is no possibility to have any political solution to the Palestinian issue. You cannot have a two-state solution if there are three states, Gaza, West Bank, and Israel. So I think, first of all, there was a political decision, a political conception going for years that has penetrated also into the intelligence, unfortunately. And not only that, since Sinwar was talking some years and was planning this operation, and the intelligence, not only that they had the plans, but they also saw the preparations done. One could always think, okay, they've done it 1 year ago, they've done it 2 years ago. So it's a kind of training. It's not a kind of something that is going to be implemented. So this is the answer that I can give, you know, as an excuse. But I don't think it's an excuse. I think since I'm in my age, I can tell you that I was in the Yom Kippur War. So I can tell you there are a lot of similarities between the collapse of the intelligence in 73 and in 23. 23. A lot. And it has to do with hubris, with thinking that we are the best, we know everything. Who are they to do something like that? It has to do with a belief that we will know exactly when it happens. We are so sophisticated. And now in 23, we are even much more sophisticated. We know we have such wonderful technology. We know everything that they are doing. Listen, it's the fact that the low-level soldiers and women soldiers that have been saying before, something is happening on the other side. They are examining how to go inside Israel. Nobody wanted to listen. Okay. Because, you know, after years that they have done a lot of things very close to the border. Once it was with the balloons that they were flying into Israel. Then they were touching the border and trying to see if they can, and they killed someone. There was a lot of activity in the last years, in the last many years. It's not 1 or 2 years, 5, 6 years. I think people got used to that and didn't think that this time it's going to be something different.
So I want to move to the questions around the potential retaliation from Iran and its proxies. We have one question from Emily Einhorn. Hi, Emily. It says, is there sufficient cooperation among the various Iranian proxies to suggest that Iran is coordinating multiple fronts of war? Or is it possible to make progress on ceasefire talks with Hamas while tensions with Hezbollah escalate? And similar, I'll add one question from Jeffrey Neiman. Hello, Jeffrey. What is the likelihood that Iran decides to ultimately rein in its proxies? Its strategy seemed based on the notion that Israel would not respond to proxy attacks directly in Iran. Does the recent assassination send a message Israel's not going to play the game on those terms any longer?
So my evaluation is that Iran will respond from Iranian territory, one, and that Iran will do it together with others. How they will do, whether Hezbollah will be the first to start and Israel will think that it is something between Israel and Hezbollah, and then the Iranians will join. I'm sure they are going to plan how they can combine other proxies together with their activity. I think it serves them twice. Once to show what's their strengths in using all those proxies, how they can organize them, and this is something that is, of course, of strengths. And on the other side, it also enables Iran to retaliate on a lower scale once it is part of a big operation, of a large operation. Their contribution could be a smaller one than if they are doing it only as they did in April. So I believe that they are going to do it all together. I don't know I do think, but that's something that I would think that doesn't mean that they are thinking the same way, that they would prefer, and I was listening to Nasrallah, he said, because yesterday was a very quiet day between Hezbollah and Israel, and he said, I decided to make one day quiet after what happened in Beirut, but tomorrow we are coming back to everything that we have done before, as usual. And I understand it as someone who is saying, okay, we'll continue shooting on you here and there. And Israel, you should believe that it's like everything that was before. But I don't think it's like everything before. I think it's a preparation for something else. And I would bet on Iran with all the proxies in this or in one configuration or another, but together with the proxies.
So you can have do you think you can have a deal with Hamas that essentially is ceasefire in Gaza with fighting on other multiple fronts? Can those two be separated, or is it all the proxies or all at once?
When I'm saying all the proxies, Hamas is not important anymore because they don't have the capabilities they had. Who is important now is Hezbollah, the Houthis in Yemen, and the militias in Iraq. They are those who are relevant to a retaliation vis-a-vis Israel. Is there a possibility to go to a deal with Hamas? That was a lot of people in the security establishment in Israel believe that a hostage deal should have been done already as a beginning of a ceasefire and then a stop of the war, and at the same time going with much more strength on Hezbollah, or separate, or stopping everything and preparing ourselves for something else in 1 or 2 years. Because I have to mention, probably all of you know it, but I have to say it. Israel, after 10 months of war, is people are, the soldiers and others are quite fatigued. Not that they don't want to fight, they are willing and everything, but they are in a different situation than they were 10 months ago. People are evacuated from their houses in the north. We have more than 1,000 houses already ruined in the north. In the south, part of the people have come back, part have not. A lot of houses were burned in the attack. So the situation in Israel today is, from my point of view, is a very difficult situation. And I think Israel has to take a breath for 2 years or something, and to deal with all our internal problems, and to try and see how we bring people back to their houses, and how we support their business, and how we make our life more normal as far as it's possible. So that's my opinion. Of course, there are those, and part of them are sitting in the government of Israel, that think that it's the best thing that has happened. We have a war, we have a long war. They continue saying every second day, we hear them on different TV shows, that it is going to be a very long war. We have to deal with all our enemies, and once and for all, to make them understand, etc., etc. Unfortunately, it's also connected to Bibi's agenda to Netanyahu's agenda on the political side. He doesn't want to have an inquiry, a committee. He doesn't want to he doesn't want to go to elections. And from his point of view, as long as there is a war, his partners in the government, the right-wing partners in the government, will not leave the government, on one hand. On the other hand, no one will be able to go to elections because he still has these 64 votes in the Israeli parliament. So I think, unfortunately, we are in a very combination of real military problems with a lot of political issues together, which makes, and as you mentioned, when you look on polls in Israel, you see that the Israeli society is divided completely on this issue. And I must say that on hostages issue, there is a higher, on two issues, there is a very high percentage of support, both on the right and on the left, of course, much more on the left, and that is on a hostage deal and of going to elections.
Yeah, it is notable that in the wake of the assassination of Haniyeh, even as you mentioned, we've had a day of quiet in the north, and Nasrallah pledged to strike in the days to come, but we haven't seen rockets from Hamas in Gaza, given the capabilities significantly eroded after 10 months of fighting. There are a number of questions about Iran's nuclear program and whether an escalation could create the conditions by which Israel would strike Iran's nuclear program. And I would add, there was another, I thought, very great question. I apologize. Give me just one moment. I want to attribute to who asked it, from Gabrielle Gallagher, who asked that about in April, how Jordan had been helpful in cooperating in the effort, the international effort to defend Israel against the onslaught of Iranian attacks on April 13. Of course, they took on a great deal of criticism for doing so. Do you expect that level of coordination should we see a regional conflict? And specifically, do you see the potential of strikes against Iran's nuclear facilities, which we have questions from many people who ask this question.
Okay. So let me answer, first of all, the short answer on the Jordanian issue, and then I'll say some words about the nuclear issue. Jordan, first of all, Jordan is part of CENTCOM, is part of the coalition of and the systems, the defense systems that are located in Jordan. So first of all, they are intercepting everything that crosses their borders. It's the normal defense of every state to its skies. And from that point of view, everything that will cross their border will be intercepted. It is also a contribution to Israel, of course, but it's first and foremost, it's the security of Jordan. So that's one thing. The other one is that the question will be whether they will allow Israel to use their skies in order to intercept things that are trying to reach Israel. I don't know. I have to say that in spite of very difficult relations on the political level between the heads of the states, the relations between the security systems, both in Jordan and in Israel, are very good and very close and very cooperative. So I believe that under the auspices of CENTCOM, with the American systems located in the Gulf and in Jordan and in other places, I believe the cooperation will be as it was in April, but I am not sure that the fact that I believe that it will be coming from different sides, not only from Iran, and it will not be so much I don't want to say easy, but once you are operating only vis-a-vis one target, it's much, even if it's many targets, but it's one direction, it's much easier than when it comes also from Yemen and from Hezbollah and from Iraq. So it will be much more difficult, and that's the reason that I am worried that there will be a lot of casualties in Israel. And if there are casualties, especially civilians, but also military one, Israel will retaliate very dramatically. So this is the Jordanian issue. Let me go to the very important questions on the nuclear issue. So everybody knows Iran is so close to a nuclear capability if it wants. If it decides, not if it wants, if it decides to do it. All the reports that are coming out and are talking about, since we know how many fissile material they have, in order to have enough fissile material for one bomb, it's 2 weeks, 3 weeks, not more than that. That doesn't mean yet, of course, a device, and doesn't mean a warhead. But it means that they might have, in very short time, enough fissile material for several devices. Now, we know that Iran has all the knowledge how to have a device and how to have a warhead. We know it from the past, and also from a lot of information that was brought to Israel by the archive that the Mossad has brought from Iran. So there is no question of capability. There is a question of a decision, a political decision. And now, and I can quote on that also the former head of the atomic energy in Iran, that might be the next one also in the new government. He said it's like a car. You have all the parts, but we don't combine them. And I think he is very correct. So this is something that, this is the when you say a threshold state, this is a threshold state. It has everything. It knows how to combine them, but it is a question of political decision. Now, whether the political decision will be taken or not, it's there is a debate. There are those within our group, in the INSS, but also with others, that think that Iran will stop at being a threshold state. They have let's say they have all the benefits of a threshold state, and it will be enough for them. And the price of deciding to go to make a political decision to go for a nuclear device might be very high. I think that I was thinking like that for many years, and I have changed my mind in the last 3 years. I think there is a combination, a very dangerous combination of one, the very sophisticated and very high level of the project already, to the feeling of Iran that they are in a much better situation than they have been before. They are selling arms to Russia, UAVs. They are so important. They feel that there is a very high self-confidence in Iran, much more than it was before. And that's the reason that they decided in April to shoot on Israel, and probably will do it again. There is a feeling in Iran that they are in a way immune, that they are in a much better position than they were in the past. Another element is that they see that the US is now in a situation of elections. Nobody wants to have any war. If there is anything that they hear from the Americans every day is, we don't want a war. There is no question. If they needed the intelligence for that, they have it from the president down to the secretary to everyone. And I think this encourages them. I don't think the US should be in love with the option of a war, but shouldn't say it every day and shouldn't put such an emphasis on that. And the last point is that the leader is in his last years, not very young, and I think he might decide that he is the best person and the best one to make such a decision, even though for years he didn't want to make this decision. But if he is looking on who are those who might replace him, I think he might think, I don't have any evidence for that, but if I combine all the reasons together, it might be that he will decide. And I even invented the slogan that Khomeini has established the Republic, Islamic Republic, and Khamenei will preserve by having the nuclear capability. And I'm looking on what is the conclusion of Iran from the last 10 months. And this is the last element that brings me to, one can think of course, in different way, but I think that what they understand is that in spite of everything they had, all the proxies and everything that is happening, Israel doesn't stop the war. And that might in their eyes mean that they need something more. And having a nuclear capability is the way to preserve the system. Everybody wants a regime change. They need something to preserve the system. And I doubt whether Israel would assassinate Haniyeh in Tehran if Iran had a nuclear bomb.
Yeah. And does that mean that Israel, do they have the capacity to strike at nuclear facilities if indeed we see a wider escalation?
I think Israel has capabilities, and of course the Israeli Air Force has a lot of capabilities. that were not used. A very small portion of Israel's Air Force capabilities were used in this war. So from that point of view, there are a lot of capabilities. Does Israel have the stamina, the support of the population, the stability of the regime, all the good relations with the US, close good relations with the US, all these elements that are very much needed in order to take such a decision, I doubt.
One question I want to take about the future of Hamas and its leadership from Ishan Tharoor, a columnist for the Washington Post, writes, given the steady decapitation of Hamas's leadership and the degradation of its military capacity, what's your view on how Hamas reconstitutes itself and where does the movement go from here?
Well, that's my last worry, where they go from here. From my point of view, Hamas should not stay as the political rulers of Gaza. I mean, one doesn't have to be Bibi Netanyahu in order to say it. What happened in the 7th of October is something that, in order to make us sure, in order to make the people that want to go back to live in the south, Hamas cannot rule Gaza. That doesn't mean that Hamas will evaporate. We know that they are quite rooted in Gaza. There is no question that they have support in Gaza. I don't think they have the same support they had before. And I think it's very difficult to know how much support they have because they are also willing to kill people that try to go against them. So you cannot make any polls in Gaza to know what people think. I'm sure most of the population doesn't understand why and what for they have been taken to this terrible war. There is a huge suffering in Gaza. We cannot talk only about Israel and what happened in Israel. We have also to mention that there is a huge suffering in Gaza and a very, very very difficult situation in Gaza, and I'm sure that people don't support this result. The question is whether they are able to do any change. Now, what I would hope to see, and I don't see it for the time being, is any kind of Israeli talking with its neighbors, with the US, and trying to bring a different leadership, even an interim leadership, a kind of there are so many ideas that have been flowing in the air, like a mandate of the UN for 2 years for someone, something that might change. On one hand, might make sure that Hamas doesn't rule Gaza. On the other hand, will enable Israel to cooperate with a new not ruling, but organizing system in Gaza. And of course, this system has to include Palestinians. It cannot include only Sweden and others that are not volunteering to come to rule Gaza. So we have to accept that if we are cooperating with the PLO in the West Bank, there is no reason not to give the PLO the possibility to rule Gaza as well. It won't be easy, and I'm not sure that they will succeed. But the reason to say that what we hear from the government, that it will be not Hamastan, not Fatahstan, is something. Fatah is the group that rules the West Bank, is something that is related to what I was saying about the past, the willingness to separate between the two entities, between Gaza and the West Bank, and doesn't have to do anything with reality because Palestinians will rule Palestinians and not others. We have to find a way that it will not enable Hamas immediately to reconstruct itself and to bring, of course, to bring arms and to smuggle arms from Egypt to Gaza and other things. So there are a lot of things that should be done in order to make sure that such an event cannot happen again. But something has to be done and some talking about it, but this government cannot do it.
Just final question. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin has made it very clear the United States stands in support of Israel's security, and the U.S. would be prepared to come to Israel's defense if needed. If we're faced with the possibility of a wide-scale regional war, Julian Biller writes, what role does or does not Russia or China play in any of all of this? If indeed we're looking at a wider scale war, to what extent does this become part of sort of the power competition that we've been seeing across the world?
First of all, I think, thank you for this question. I think this event is, no question, it is within this competition. We see two camps. They are very defined. It is Iran, Russia, China, North Korea. No question about that. Very homogeneous, they know who is the enemy. And on the other side, we have the like-minded, I will call him. No, it's not a camp. It's not cooperating like a camp. It's a like-minded countries, the US, the Europe, Israel. And I think the fact that President Biden has come to the support of Israel the way he has done it is not only because he loves Israel and not only because what he has said that he is a Zionist. It is because he understood very quickly that it is this camp of Iran, its proxies, and supported by Russia and China, cannot win this war. And I think this is very important. The problem is that we didn't translate it in a way that Israel will benefit enough from that. But I think it is within this competition. That doesn't mean, and I don't think that Russia and China are thinking in any terms of being involved in a war. Russia is involved in Ukraine, it has enough, but it is willing to support Iran in order to make sure that the US and its proxy, Israel, let's put it like that, does not win. I mean, here there is a struggle between these two camps, but while the US is willing to support Israel with defense, I don't think the US is thinking in terms of being involved in the war. I think and also what the secretary said yesterday, we will defend Israel, support defending Israel. And I think he was thinking in terms of the regional anti-aircraft and anti-missile system and everything that comes with that, and also with the transfer of arms and ammunition and bombs and everything that is needed for the war. And that was very important that he came out openly. He said it to our defense minister on the phone call, but it was very important that he came out publicly and said it, because our enemies are looking first and foremost on the US. What they are afraid is from the US and not from Israel, unfortunately. But therefore it's very important that the US is saying loudly and openly that it will support Israel. That puts a different calculation on the side of our enemies.
Important point to close on. Sima, thank you so much for being with us on short notice and being with us in such important days. I want to thank everyone for joining us, and especially the 40 people that asked questions, including those we could not get to, but very important and challenging questions amidst very important and challenging days. Thoughts are with all of you. Hoping for quiet days ahead, if at all possible, and certainly for Israel's security to be maintained in these especially challenging days. Sima, thank you so very much. Thank you all for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for supporting us.
Thank you. A recording of this call will be, this Zoom will be shared online and to everyone who's subscribed. And please be sure to subscribe to Israel Policy Forum. We welcome your support, participation, feedback in all we do. Check out our podcast for more analysis, and we will speak with you all soon.